there's an idea that I want to express, and you can say it a couple different ways. And that would be that coaching is easy. Coaching as a discipline is easy, or anybody can do it well. Uh, that's what I would say would be, fallacy or two around coaching practice. There is a method to coaching, and so it's not a matter of I hang my shingle out and I get clients and I make things up, right? It's not that at all. Following the traditional coaching, proven methodology practices, it's a conversation, yes, but it's a very specialized consultation, or I should say, a conversation is what I meant to say. It's a very specialized conversation, and it's formalized. And to do it right, it behooves a young coach, or when I get into that practice, to study the traditional methods and practice those methods before you take on a paying client.
Hey everyone, this is Devin Miller here with another episode of The Inventive Expert. I'm your host, Devin Miller, the serial entrepreneur that's grown several startups into 7- and 8-figure businesses, as well as the founder and CEO of Miller IP Law, where we help startups and small businesses with their patents and trademarks. You ever need help with yours? Just go to strategymeeting.com, grab some time with us to chat, and we're always here to help. Now, today we've got another great guest on the podcast, Brian Kail. And we're going to be talking a little bit about a few things, including generally career coaching, and also when you're looking to hire a career coach, how do you decide who to hire and what qualifications they should have. Also looking a little bit about how to sell yourself to a client and what you should highlight, and planning and executing a job search, and defining what you're an authority on and the processes to be successful in business, and even identifying a bit of the problems that you are solving. So should be a great discussion, and definitely looking forward to it. And with that much as a introduction, welcome on the podcast, Brian.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So now, before we dive into a lot of the fun topics at hand, for those that haven't caught the Inventive Journey episode, and definitely for those that haven't caught it, Brian was on the sister podcast, The Inventive Journey. So I definitely invite you to go and check out that episode and hear about his journey. But for those that haven't had the time, or otherwise are just looking for that short snippet overview version, give the audience just a quick introduction to yourself.
Sure. I'm Brian Kail. I'm owner and general manager of Ascender Professional Coaching, LLC. I have a background in business and technology, 35 years corporate business experience. And in 2015, I decided to leave that behind me, and I wanted to help people, but help them in a specific way. And so I launched my career practice, which is Ascender Professional Coaching. We do career and executive coaching.
Awesome. Well, definitely a great introduction, and excited to have you on. So maybe initially to kick things off, just kind of as maybe a general question, because I think people have heard of career coaches. Some people probably use them. Some of them are more familiar, and some of them, other than guessing what the term or what it is based on the terminology, don't have a lot of experience or a lot of background. So for those that don't have too much experience or know what a career coach is, maybe this is a bit of helpful information, helps understand what is a career coach.
Yeah, that's a good question, really. And I learned through the coaching training that I had several years ago, around 2014, 2015. There's different pockets, there's different specializations within the coaching discipline. And a career coach, the short story is, if you are considering a job search, if you're looking for a change, you're at least considering a change, then you probably want to have a conversation or two with someone that calls themselves a career coach. And just, I work in a couple different areas, and maybe just to call out differences between career coaching and executive coaching. Career coaching, as I say, is generally around a job search. I want to make a change. I'm happy. What's your time frame, so forth. What are your passions, this kind of thing. Executive coaching is really, I want to stay with my company. I want to stay in my position, but I want to grow my position. I want to grow my leadership. I want to grow my influencing skills. And I'm looking for some help to do that. So I have done both over the years, both career and executive coaching. So I hope that helps. And that maybe one thing too, real quick, there can be some confusion between a recruiter and a career coach, and those are two separate jobs. And the short story is a recruiter gets paid by the hiring company. So they care about the hiring company and making them happy. A career coach works for their client, and that's what they care about. They care about the client. They hopefully they want them to be happy and to improve their life and their career.
Mm. So if I were to maybe, and I'll try and summarize it and you can tell me where I'm wrong, career coach is basically someone that's helping you to transition your career to a new position or a new direction that you're wanting to head, and giving you coaching, feedback, ideas, and mentoring as to how you would set that up or otherwise be successful. Is that a fair summary?
No, that's good. I think you've got it. I think you've got a good grasp on it. And actually, the way that I've grown my practice is there's a process, there's a method that I typically will engage with a client and then work them through set series of steps that I found really to be the best way to progress, or the best way to move forward. But no, you're absolutely right. I think you've got a good grasp on it.
Awesome. Well, glad I could get at least a small grasp on it. So, yeah. So with that, one of the things that I think that people would, if I was in there putting myself in their position saying, hey, I'm looking to maybe get a bit of guidance, mentorship, hire a career coach. Now, the thing that I see, at least from my perspective, whether it's on LinkedIn or Facebook or, online or whatever, is there's a lot of different coaches. And I'm sure there are some that are very qualified and are very, astute and can provide a lot of value. And there are other people that have done very little and they just put coach in front of or in their title and they say, hey, I can coach people. I've done this before, or I haven't even done it before, but nobody's going to know. And so if you're saying, hey, I'm looking for some coaching, I've tried to make a career change or try and do this. I'm not happy, or I'm not able to go in the direction I want, and I'm needing a bit of assistance. And so now I'm looking to make that transition. How do you go about finding who is a good coach and whether or not they are worth the payment, worth the time and the effort and the payment and everything else? How do you kind of weigh those two different, or weigh that out?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. And this is something that I talk to prospects about if they're going through that process of selection. What questions should I ask? What should I look for? And I usually tell them, when you're considering a career coach, or really a coach in general, number one question: are they licensed or certified to do the work? And if I were to take on, let's say I need, God, I don't know, maybe I need my furnace replaced in my house, or I need something that's fairly technical. One of the things I'm going to look for is, are you certified? Do you, can you give me some assurance that to know what you're doing? So, that's usually one thing that I mentioned is I would look for licensing or certification. In my case, I have a general certification as a professional coach. And then I also have specific certification as a career coach. So a certified career coach, I have that title. The other thing that I would that I mentioned to prospects when I'm talking to them is experience. And frankly, if you're new to coaching, you're just building your practice, you can't really offer that. But the way that I phrase this is, how long has the coach been doing this as their main occupation? Because coaching is something that people tend to do as a sideline, as a side hustle, this kind of thing. And there can be some good ones, but I make a point of calling out, is this the main work that they're doing? And you're probably going to find a higher level of, professional. Then the third thing I have prospects think about is method. What is the coach's method? What is their methodology? And especially if I know they're going to talk to a couple of coaches, which is fine. I think they should, do some due diligence and find the right person for them. But that's the other thing that I would call out for a prospect to think about, to follow up on.
No, makes good sense. Now, let me maybe follow up or kind of circling back and just following up with one question, which is, so I definitely get if you're certified or you've gone through, almost like you said, a plumber or an electrician or anything that's gone through a certification. Now, this is excusing my ignorance, which is, it seems like, it's a certification is only as good as if I know that the person that's doing the certification is worthwhile, right? In other words, if I'm certified, if I just step, I'm certified because I certified myself, doesn't really hold any weight because there isn't really any anything behind that certification yet. I'm sure that there are other certifying bodies that are actually have some degree of professionalism and actually or do work to make sure that the person that you're talking with has gone through the steps needed to make sure that they can provide good guidance. So how do you figure out which certifying bodies, or kind of, who you should be looking at, or kind of what you should, or how do you sift through that?
No, that's a good question again. And I will say that, current state, ICF tends to be the largest professional body around coaching right now. They have the largest membership, and I do support ICF and I adhere to their code of ethics. But there are competing certifications out there. So I would make the suggestion that if you are hunting out a coach, or specifically a career coach, ask questions. Maybe jot down some questions ahead of time, and ask them some tough questions around, like I said, what is your method? What is your process that you bring people through? What is your success? Do you have recommendations? My recommendations are publicly available through LinkedIn. That's the main channel that I find new work. But I think that asking questions is really helpful. Ask them some hard questions, and gut level that's not to be ignored. I think that's important. If call it chemistry, or that kind of click that happens with people. Yeah, I trust this guy. I like this guy. I can work with this guy. Or no, maybe not. Brian's too much of an egghead or something. Whatever the case may be, I don't want to work with him. I'll work with somebody else. But I would say ask questions, ask hard questions, and listen to your gut on, does this guy, is he really what he says he is? And do your research, do some due diligence, check out their recommendations. Those would be some suggestions.
No, and I think that those are definitely some great suggestions. So now let's say, okay, I've gone through this, process of identifying a coach that I think is good, looking at the certifications, otherwise feel comfortable and think that they'll be able to assist me. Now, let's say I've gone through all that and I'm saying, okay, I'd like to start to prepare, plan, or execute a job search. In other words, I'm saying, hey, I'd like to make a transition in my career, either to a different type of career field or to a different type of position, or in other words, take my career in a different direction that I hope will be happier with. How do you start, or how do you start planning or otherwise preparing to execute for that search?
Yeah, so some things that I found that are helpful, and frankly, I utilize these with new clients. I typically start out with some personality work. Usually employ a couple personality preference tests. That's going to give the client some self-knowledge, and that's a good thing. It's also going to provide me with some information quickly about what kind of a client am I working with. Things like, are they, extrovert or introvert, and to what degree are they extrovert or introvert? Are they face-to-face people? What are their strengths? These kind of things. So that's kind of a good foundation to start with. Then the other thing that I do almost immediately is start working with some analytic pieces. And specifically, I want to learn more about their skills and their experience. So hard skills, soft skills, tasks, responsibilities, accomplishments. Those are all important pieces. And then, with their help, I usually ask them to work with me on, so let's identify, we're going through this rather precise mapping of what your strong suit is and what you love doing. Help me to understand which of these things that which of these skills that you've built, which is these experiences that you've had, which do you love, which do you like, which do you dislike, which do you hate? And then I focus with them on the loves and the likes. And so that's essentially, that's a large part, actually, about the 1/3 of my process or my method in working with clients. That's essentially, I've explained to you what my foundational phase is in my program.
No, and that makes a good sense. So now you kind of go through that and just kind of continuing on. So you go through that. Okay, let's figure out what you like, what you don't like, where you find enjoyment, what type of or position would fit your type of your personality type and things that you do. So you go through all that and take spend a good time. And I think that is certainly important because a lot of times you just want to jump. A lot of people just want to jump to the next thing or just want to don't want to spend the time. And I think to or go through that process definitely makes a lot of sense because you can actually hone in on what will be better for you in the long run. So now let's say you go through all that, go through that process, then how do you then map that up with the kind of positions that are out there? Is that, hey, you have all this, you like to do X, Y, and Z, here's the type of positions, or kind of walk us through how do you figure out if once you have all that information, where do you take that?
Yeah, that's again, you're digging into it. We're digging into some of the steps and some of the processes that they use. And frankly, I don't like to disclose too many details, but because this is, frankly, it's given me a competitive advantage in a very competitive field. But suffice it to say, once we do this mapping, this fairly precise mapping of skills, hard skills, soft skills, so forth, and focus on the loves and the likes. Then we do some research. We do some research into how does this map into the current job market. So I'll give you maybe a quick example, but this is not pie in the sky stuff. This really needs to be a practical approach. So, for example, I work with somebody and boy, they're really strong in creativity. They're really strong with language. They love poetry. You should be a poet. Go out there and write your poetry and go find a publisher and then send me a postcard on how you did. So for most people, being a poet along with being a philosopher, well, it's just not very practical. So I do try to. So the way that I think about it is where passion meets practical. So I work with some assessment work on skills and passions, but then we do a search on the current job market, and frankly, what one job that I do as a career coach is I come up with some creative ideas, maybe some suggestions or some thoughts that they hadn't thought of, the client hadn't thought about pursuing. Um, so the case of the poet that might be well, you know, maybe you could use your talents around copy. Maybe you could use your talents around content management. So I'm just throwing some ideas out there, but that's one benefit in working with a career coach is hopefully I come up with some ideas, some suggestions that the client hadn't thought about, but they remain the decision maker. And that's the other thing that I want to emphasize with the coaching practice in general is I come up with suggestions, but ultimately the client is the ultimate decision maker. And once we make a decision, they make a decision. I back them up, and I say, let's do it. Let's go for it.
No, I think that makes a lot of sense. So now, or maybe just because and the reason I think this is certainly a pertinent topic is you're seeing and I was reading a few articles that you had kind of the Great Resignation, and now you have to say people that went through the Great Resignation and saying, "Hey, I'm going to go find a better job, more competitive, better pay," which definitely understand, are now worried that they're on the chopping block because they're going through an inflationary cycle and they're seeing a lot of layoffs in different industries. Certainly depends on the industry, and they're now saying, "Okay, I'm probably the last one, one of the last ones hired. Now I'm going to be looking for that." And so, if you're to say more of kind of looking for a job searching in general or kind of setting yourself up to success as far as one, not just jumping into a new job just because you need, and I get if you need to have an income, you may do that as a temporary step, but how do you, any thoughts or ideas or guidance on those people that are looking to, one, kind of maybe getting in a crunch or worried about their industry, and yet two, don't want to make any, mess it up and just go from another job, from one job they get laid off to a job that they hate. What can, if they don't have the bandwidth, time, or availability of a coach, any kind of initial thoughts as to what they should consider, what they should be doing themselves to try and better set themselves up for success?
Yeah, so you're really you're talking about a couple different things, and the first thing I would say is, just in general, is the things that we love doing, that we have passion around doing, are usually things that we're good at or really good at. So that would be where I would put my focus. Another simple thing that if the person's not in a position to hire a career coach, something like this, and they're worried, they're concerned about, geez, I think there's another wave of layoffs coming up and I might be there. Do some prep work, go back to your existing resume. And one simple thing they can do is take a look at their job. Now, this assumes that they've had a couple of jobs, a few jobs, but go back on your resume and circle what you think was your favorite job, or maybe your favorite 3 jobs, and go through that exercise. And then after you do that, go into the detail and highlight those skills, those responsibilities that you had, the tasks that you did that were especially fulfilling to you. And that will set you on the right course. The other thing I was going to comment on is, you're right. We were going through some layoffs. Literally 10 minutes before we started this interview, I posted a video on LinkedIn around the season of layoffs, and what can we do, what can a person do to minimize their risk. And I actually wrote an article, it was on the 12th, I think, published in LinkedIn, about best ways to survive the layoffs of 2022. And you're right, 2021 was called the Great resignation, and I saw that happening. I think I mean, I hope I'm wrong, but I think 2022 is going to be remembered as the year of layoffs. I could see this coming. I wasn't sure about the exact timing, but I'm seeing it happen in my feeds and news headlines and so forth. So that's something that people can take a look at that article and give you a taste of what's in the article. If you're a remote worker, and if you can, get into the office. Go into the office, work from the office, because that's the human piece of it. There's a couple surveys out there that supervisors responded back that they are more likely to lay off remote workers than workers that work, in an office. Make yourself more valuable, work longer hours, and let your boss know that you worked longer hours. Take on more projects if you have the ability, and you think, if you think you got the bandwidth, take on more projects. Again, you're going to minimize your chances of being cut loose in a layoff. So those are just some ideas. And if someone that hears this podcast, go find that article that I wrote. It's Brian Kail. It's best ways to survive the layoffs of 2022.
No, that's awesome. And I think that it'll be interesting. It's interesting how you kind of have the pendulum that swings back and forth between employees that are having a lot of the leverage, and hey, there's a shortage on employees, and then there's, hey, the jobs are scarce and the employers have the leverage, and it's just one where it seems to swing back and forth. And so I think to be able to figure that out is always a great skill. Now, one maybe follow-up question, because a lot of our audience is either owners or founders of startups and small businesses, or there are people that are wanting to do their own startup or small business but haven't made that leap yet. And so if you're coaching someone, is there any kind of signs or indicators that, hey, maybe rather than go work for brush up on your resume or go work for someone else, this is a great opportunity to go start your own business, or to go do a whether it's acquire a startup that's already out there, or a small business, or go start your own thing, or do something more on that lines. Any kind of indicators that people might want to consider that?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Any client that I talk to and I bring, we put it all on the table. And, I said, let's bring it all in. Let's take a look at it and then we'll sort through it. And one of those options would be maybe you should start your own company. Maybe if, if you're upset with the way that, your employer is treating you or your boss is treating you and you've had enough and you've got the ability, maybe look at that. The clients that I've worked with over the last 7 years that I can think of that would have those kind of earmarks, right? Would have those kind of qualities, would be people that like a variety of tasks. They like they have a variety of skills. They believe in themselves, they believe in their abilities, and practical sense, they've got some resources. So you're probably acquainted with the nonprofit group SCORE, score.org, and they help entrepreneurs, small business people, people that want to start a small business. And one of their guidelines early on, I did some initial training with them. One of their guidelines was, if you're going to start your own company, your own business, do you have a year's salary saved? And most people don't. But yeah, that's something that especially if I see those kind of earmarks that they're creative, they believe in their skills, and they like a variety of skills. They don't just like, I love finance and that's the only thing I like, or I like analytics and that's the only thing I like. I mean, if it's a very broad, wide, if it's a wide set of skills that they enjoy, then it kind of makes sense to talk to them about, okay, what would this look like, and what would it take to, if you're going to get serious with this, what is it going to take?
No, I think there's a lot of a good idea or good things in there, and I think that sometimes you always have to look at when you're, whether it's laying off or even if you're just anticipating, hey, things are slowing down or the business is going in a different direction, might be a good opportunity to take that leap or to try things out. Especially maybe it's not you don't have a full year, which is hard for a lot of people, especially if you're in a in the different income brackets, to save that much all up, or if you have a family and kids and a house payment and all the car payment and all these other things. But I think a lot of times I was looking to step back and say, is this an opportunity that I can, maybe it's a reset, or can I go in a different direction or present a better option that I probably wouldn't have otherwise pushed myself out of the comfort zone, wouldn't have done it otherwise, because you get comfortable a lot of times and then you don't do those things. But when you get pushed out of your comfort zone already, it presents the opportunity to a lot of times explore options that you may not have otherwise considered.
No, absolutely. And again, I usually try to mention any client that I work with that's interested in a career coach. I try to emphasize with this is an opportunity. This is your opportunity right now. So you get laid off. Okay, I'm sorry it happened. You're here. If you want to change direction, if you've been unhappy, and let's measure that, here's the opportunity. You can do it now.
No, and I think that's a great options and great thoughts. So, well, we've already flown through the half an hour for the podcast, and we barely even scratched the surface. So I'm sure we'll have to have you back on, maybe to one of the sister podcasts, and dive in a bit deeper on some of these things, as well as your current business. But as we're wrapping up this episode, I always like to wrap up with one question. So we'll jump to that now, which is, within your industry, what is the biggest myth and why is it wrong?
So I suspected you're going to ask this question, and there's an idea that I want to express, and you can say it a couple different ways. And that would be that coaching is easy. Coaching as a discipline is easy, or anybody can do it well. That's what I would say would be, fallacy or two around the coaching practice. There is a method to coaching. And so it's not a matter of I hang my shingle out and I get clients and I make things up, right? It's not that at all. Following the traditional coaching, proven methodology practices, it's a conversation, yes, but it's a very specialized consultation, or I should say a conversation is what I meant to say. It's a very specialized conversation, and it's formalized. And to do it right, it behooves a young coach, or when I get into that practice, to study the traditional methods and practice those methods before you take on a paying client.
No, I think that's definitely a great great takeaway and great thoughts to think through. Well, awesome. Well, as we wrap up, if people are saying, "Hey, I'm looking for a career coach, or I'm looking to make a transition," love to reach out to you, learn a little bit more about what you have or what you offer. If it was, in other words, if they want to be a customer, they want to be a client, they want to be maybe an employee, they want to be an investor, they want to be your next best friend, any or all of the above, what's the best way to reach out to you, contact you, find out more?
Right. So as before, I would say that probably the easiest thing, everybody's got internet access. So my business site is ascendprocoach.com, ASCENDPROCOACH.com. Go to the landing page. There's a phone number there. Call that phone number. I will get leave a message. I will get the message. And if you're active a lot in LinkedIn, look for me in LinkedIn. I'm active there. Either way is just fine. And as I mentioned, as long as I've got bandwidth, I will try to help someone. Whether I sign them as a client or not, I will try to help them in some way if I can at all, if I've got the bandwidth.
Awesome. Well, I definitely encourage people to reach out, connect, and otherwise or leverage a great resource. So, well, thank you again for coming on the podcast. It's been it's been a pleasure. Now, for all of you that are listeners, if you can help us to be able to share this great expertise with even more founders, startups, and small businesses as they're on their way to success, or if they're looking to make a shift in their career, just reach out, or if you can help us by clicking share, subscribe, and leaving us a review for the podcast, it helps us to or help even more people. And along those notes, if you ever need help with your patents, your trademarks, or anything else with your startup, your small business, just go to strategymeeting.com, grab some time with us to chat, and we're always here to help. Thank you again, Brian, and wish the next leg of your journey even better than the last.
Thanks for having me.